Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think apologies if I've started too soon. My name is Martin Palmer. I'm the interim CEO of Faith Invest. And many of you know me from years ago when we were doing the ARC programs and projects. It's a delight to have you join us again today. And we have two absolutely fascinating speakers and contributors to join us today. Celebration. This is not a phrase that is often heard in the worlds of environment or development. We tend on the whole, not so much to celebrate, but to mourn, to complain, to protest, to agitate, to push for, to argue for. So celebration is a bit of a foreign concept. I've always asked people when I work with them in the environmental movement, have they ever produced a joke book or a songbook? And the answer always is no, they haven't. And one of the great gifts that the faiths bring to the whole environmental and sustainable movement is that we do know how to celebrate. Yes, we know how to fast, we know how to push for simpler lifestyles. We do that through, for example, at the moment, those of us who are Christians, we are living in the time of Lent, which takes us through to Easter, and we simplify, we cut back, we give up things, we focus on remembering that the material world is not the most important. But then, by George, when Easter comes, we celebrate. Same with Ramadan, cutting back, simplification. And then if you've ever been in a Muslim country at Eid al-Fitr, you will know the explosion of joy and celebration. And why do we do this? Well, we helped develop the first ever faith-based education for sustainable education toolkit. This is a UNICEF program right across the world of education for sustainable development. And we helped develop this with the Kenyan authorities and the faith groups in Kenya, Muslim, Christian, and Hindu. And when the person who led that program from our side, Mary Bellacom, when she went to speak at an international conference on education for sustainable development, someone stood up and said, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between an ordinary toolkit for education for sustainable development and a faith-based one? Mary gave a brilliant answer. She said, we start by saying thank you. Because as faiths, we are grateful for being part of this greater story of life on earth. We are grateful for the generosity of the divine, however we understand that to be. And we do need to celebrate. Human beings cannot just be told all the time they're bad, they're not good enough, they're wicked, they ought to stop doing things. That's bad psychology. And the faiths are the longest lasting, most sustainable organizations in the world, partly because we actually understand human psychology. We know how to motivate people to do more, but by also giving them times to have fun. There is a wonderful Jewish saying that on the day of judgment, you will be judged and condemned for every legitimate pleasure you could have had and did not. And I think we need a little more of that spirit that this is a world to be delighted in, as well as a world that we need to protect and forces that we do need to struggle against. And it was actually an idea of His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, the then international president of WWF. It was his idea that we should ask the faiths to put aside a day or a week or whatever was appropriate in their religious calendar so that every year they would focus on the environment. And he is at the moment in hospital. He will be 100 in June. And I would ask you to keep him in your thoughts and prayers in the hope that he will more than make it to his 100th birthday and beyond. So do please hold him in your thoughts and prayers, a remarkable man. But his idea was, if we can build into the calendar of the faiths a regular time for reflection on the environment, if we can build in different practices that enjoy celebration but simplify as well, we can change the world literally year by year. As faiths, we are great at marking calendars. So for example, we have in EcoSeek, we have the 14th of March, which has become a huge focus. It celebrates the 5th guru of Sikhism, who is renowned for his compassion and affection for trees and planting trees. That has become a huge movement in the space of something like 10 years. It has spread around the world, and every major Sikh community now does this. And I've come across young Sikhs who are convinced that they've been doing this since the time of the fifth guru, sometime in the 17th or in the 18th century. But we also have festivals that have been there long before this, which gave us some inspiration. In Judaism, Tu B'Shavat, which is the festival of the trees, a festival that takes place usually in February and honors and plants trees around the world. It is a remarkably successful program. It helped reforest parts of Israel. It has meant that Jewish communities have often been at the forefront of tree planting programs in the communities where they lived, urban communities and so forth. And then this change in habits. Well, one of the most successful ones that I know of was launched by the Taoists and Buddhists in China. And one of the problems there is that as the country has become wealthier, people have been coming to the temples and bringing huge bundles of incense. I mean, we're talking 1,000 sticks of incense, in the belief that the more incense you burn, the more favors you will get from the gods or from the Buddha. And so working with us back about 10, 12 years ago, they brought in a ban, no more than 3 sticks, one for heaven, one for earth, one for you, no more than 3. And now as people come with these huge bundles, creating tremendous pollution and dust and burning of resources, they're taken away from. But probably one of the most extraordinary successes, again, this was inspired by His Royal Highness Prince Philip. And this was the idea that when we were working back in 1988, for the first time with the Orthodox Church and with the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, the first amongst equals in the Orthodox Church, some 300 million Christians around the world, we came up with the idea of suggesting to them that they set aside a day for the environment. And it was September the 1st, the beginning of the Orthodox calendar, the feast day of St. Giles, a wonderful saint whose most famous action is that he protected a deer from an arrow by placing his own hand in front of the deer and taking the arrow in his hand. A wonderful symbol of the human sacrifice in order to make life on earth better for some other species. And that idea caught on immediately. By 1989, it had become a festival in the Greek church. Beyond that, in 1993, it was taken up by all the major Orthodox churches around the world and is now a major feature in their calendars. It triggered the Catholics to think, well, that's nice, what's ours? And they decided to choose October the 4th, St. Francis Day, and that has now become a major time of celebration. And then a wonderful thing happened. All the other churches, the Protestants, the Lutherans, the Anglicans, kind of went, well, why don't we just fill that whole period in from September the 1st to October the 4th and create for the first time in 1300 years a new season in the church's calendar to go alongside Advent in preparation for Christmas and Lent in preparation for Easter. We now have Creation Tide or Creation Time. So it has become something that every church now does. And this is why the faith long-term plans exist. They are designed in order that the faiths will look at how they can embed the very best of environmental practice into every aspect of their lives, into their assets, their buildings, their finances, into their lifestyles and the advice they give to the laity, into their wisdom and teachings, into their advocacy, into their partnerships, into their media, in all these different areas. In education, we run 50% of all schools. We should be changing the world just by that alone. So embedding into the practice of the faith, that is what faith long-term plans are about. And I think of all those, the idea of celebration is the one that has been most successful, not least, I suspect, because it does quite often encourage people to party and have fun. And that's always a good strategy. So it's a real delight to have you with us. We're going to start with a fascinating video, a film about how the Buddhist monks in Thailand and Cambodia and other parts of Southeast Asia have taken one sentence in one of the greatest Buddhist texts, the Lotus Sutra, in which the Lotus Sutra talks about the fact that if in order to save any sentient life, not just human life, any sentient life, the Buddha was able to come in very different shapes and forms, could come as a woman, could come as a dog, could comes a tree. Based on that, a movement developed to ordain trees as monks. And by ordaining the trees as monks, that created a sacred space around those trees, which means that no Buddhist is going to go logging there. No Buddhist is going to indulge in illegal forestry. And it has helped to protect hundreds and hundreds of forests. So let's watch this extraordinary film of ordaining trees as monks. So a remarkable new ritual, a new tradition, a new celebration that has been brought into being because the Buddhists went deep into their own history, their own culture, their own teachings, and found something that radically changed how people saw something as simple and yet as important as trees. That's what celebration can do, shine a new light through old practices on different ways forward. And we're going to start our session with Spiridula Foutinis from the Greek Orthodox Church in North America. And Spiridoulis is the coordinator of programs for the Department of Inter-Orthodox, Ecumenical and Interfaith Relations, which seems to cover just about the whole of the world, I think, Spiridula, of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America. And we are delighted to have you join us today and to tell us something about what really was the very first major new festival created, which was the Orthodox Day of the Environment. Spiridula, we are delighted to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you, Martin. And I must say the video we just watched really moved me. And also I thank you because you gave a brief overview of some of the history I'm going to give to you from the Orthodox Church. So if you don't mind all holding for a second, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, thank you again. The past few weeks, we've had nonstop snow here. As I waited for the bus earlier this week, the snow was falling in thick, beautiful flakes, and I passed the time by looking at the individual snowflakes that stuck to my hair. I was in such awe and had so much joy to see the tiny individual crystals with their beautiful patterns, and I was reminded again of the beauty of the creation around us. At the same time, I realized that it was because I had to wait for the bus, the fact that my phone's battery would have died in the cold, and that I couldn't see through my foggy glasses, that I was left with the silence of the snow falling around me and the opportunity to celebrate the incredible beauty of something so tiny as the individual snowflake. Silence is an important part of our Orthodox Christian theology, my own personal tradition, but also our relationship with nature as human beings. How many times do we hear our friends desire and take pleasure in their hikes through nature that are full of silence, moments of pause, and a reflection on something greater than ourselves? His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, in his book Encountering the Mystery, says silence is necessary to listen to the voice of creation in order to reach a point of maturity and dignity toward the natural environment. His All Holiness continues that the way we relate to material things directly reflects the way we relate to God. In my short time today, I would like to share with you briefly the experience and theological understanding of the environment from an Eastern Orthodox Christian perspective by taking you through a brief history of the work of His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, known as the Green Patriarch, the inauguration of September 1st as a day for the protection of the environment, how we use celebration and our relation to nature in the Orthodox Church, and where the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese in America currently is. But again, before all this, I would like to thank Martin and all the staff at Faith Invest for their kind invitation to be with all of you today. The Orthodox Church's involvement in the environmental movement began with the General Assembly of the World Council of Churches in Vancouver in 1983, which resulted in several inter-Orthodox meetings on justice, peace, and the integrity of creation. 3 significant Orthodox consultations on the environment inspired by the Ecumenical Patriarchate took place in Sofia, Bulgaria, Patmos, Greece, and Minsk, Russia, all during Bartholomew's tenure as assistant to Ecumenical Patriarch Demetrius from 1972 to 1990. The second of these consultations, held in Patmos, marked the 900th year anniversary of the foundation of the historic monastery of St. John the Evangelist, built near the cave where St. John, the beloved disciple of Jesus Christ and author of the 4th Gospel, wrote down his inspired revelations in the last book of the Christian scriptures. On this festive occasion, the Ecumenical Patriarchate and the Greek Ministry of Cultural Affairs organized a conference in cooperation with the local authorities of the island. Representing Patriarch Demetrius as keynote speaker was Metropolitan John Zizoulas of Pergamon, arguably the most influential theologian of our time, and the most significant Orthodox spokesman on issues related to ecology and religion, and later chairman of the Academy of Athens. One of the paramount results of this gathering was the proposal that the Ecumenical Patriarchate designate and devote a specific day of the year as a special opportunity for Orthodox believers to pray for the protection and preservation of the natural creation. On September 1st, 1989, more than 25 years prior to the release of a similar encyclical by Pope Francis, Patriarch Demetrius published the first encyclical letter on the environment. This encyclical, issued on what is also the first day of the ecclesiastical new year, known as the Indiction, formally established the first day of September as a day for all Orthodox Christians, initially within the jurisdiction of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, to offer prayers for the environment. The call to prayer was heeded by all Orthodox churches in the early 1990s, as well as by other Christian confessions, including the World Council of Churches and the Conference of European Churches in the early 2000s. After the passing of Patriarch Demetrius, the newly elected Patriarch Bartholomew, 1 month after his election in 1991, convened an ecological conference on the island of Crete within his immediate church jurisdiction. The event, titled Living in the Creation of the Lord, was officially opened by Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh and international chairman of the World Wildlife Fund, who was also involved with the 1988 event at Patmos and instrumental in connecting religious communities with secular environmental organizations. The prince's own connections with the Orthodox Church ran deep. His grandfather was King George I of Greece and his grandmother from the Russian Romanov dynasty. This was followed in the summer of 1992 with a visit by the Duke of Edinburgh to Istanbul for another environmental convocation at the Theological School of Halki, and in late 1993, the Ecumenical Patriarch returned the courtesy, meeting with Prince Philip at Buckingham Palace. The two leaders would seal friendship of common purpose and active cooperation for the preservation of the environment, including another conference in Bamos in 1995. In early 1992, again only weeks after his election, Patriarch Bartholomew called an unprecedented meeting of all Orthodox patriarchs and primates at the Fanar, initiating a historical series of such meetings as an expression of unity by inviting all Orthodox leaders to inform their churches about the critical significance of this issue for our times. Never before had such a synaxis of the heads of all Orthodox churches convened. Care for the environment featured prominently in the sessions, where all of the prelates formally endorsed September 1st as a day of pan-Orthodox prayer for God's creation. Much more can be said about the work of the Ecumenical Patriarchate and the organization of conferences on the island of Halki, the Religious and Scientific Committee, the Halki Summits, and the Green Attica Symposium, which continue to bring together internationally renowned scientists, religious leaders, NGOs, and others to continue in the protection of our environment through common understanding. Perhaps a talk in the future can feature more of these important gatherings and their monumental contributions. In the Orthodox tradition, we are called to be priests of creation. St. Gregory the theologian, looking at Adam, the first man, says, Adam was destined to serve as a royal steward over creation, royalty, yet at the same time subject to a heavenly king, temporary, yet at the same time immortal, visible by virtue of the body, yet at the same time invisible by virtue of the soul. His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew adds, we could be neither prideful in our authority nor falsely humble in our self-limitations. We are called to preserve creation by serving its creator. Preservation and celebration are intimately connected. On Sundays, we celebrate the Divine Liturgy, where we celebrate life by taking the creation God has given us and offering it to him. In the Orthodox tradition, the bread and wine that is offered by the people becomes the body and blood of Christ during the liturgy. Right before we come to the point of consecration of the gifts, during the liturgy, the priest explains, thine own from thine own, we offer to thee in all and for all. This exclamation validates our connection to all things, visible and invisible, united by our desire to glorify our God, and it gives us a sense of accountability. If we are united to all creation, we must also take the steps to protect and nurture our world. Additionally to the bread and wine offered weekly in church, creation plays a central role to the celebration of our services and sacraments and is deeply embedded in the hymns of the church. Beeswax candles are used to light candles when we enter the church, incense is used to bless throughout the service, oil for the sacraments of chrismation and unction, and water for baptism and the ayasmos or holy water, which is blessed in the Feast of Theophany, and many, many more. On the Feast of Theophany, the baptism of Christ in the Jordan River is also a prime example of how creation and worship intertwine. During the Feast of Theophany and the Matin service before the liturgy, we chant, Jordan River, do tell us, what did you see and were amazed? I saw him naked whom none can see and shuddered in fear. And how was I not to shudder at him and be frightened? The angels, when they saw him, also shuddered in awe, and heaven was astonished, and astounded was earth. The sea recoiled along with all things, both visible and invisible, for Christ appeared in the Jordan River to sanctify the waters. After the service, the community goes to the nearest body of water, and the priest reads the prayers for the blessing of the waters. He then throws a cross into the water to bless it, and in celebration and to receive the cross, people dive into the water and at times compete to see who can secure the cross first. This annual practice reminds us of our connection to creation, specifically the water, and how Christ came and sanctified all of creation. And then we take this holy water home to drink and bless our homes, again reminding us of the inextricable bond between creation and our Creator. Celebration is not only found in the liturgy, but after the liturgy and on feast days. As Lent has begun for the Western Christian world and we have entered the Triodion period right before Great Lent, we look forward to the joy of the Feast of Pascha, or Easter, the Feast of Feasts. After 40 days of fasting, we celebrate with, of course, a feast. In the Greek Orthodox tradition, after the resurrection service, we receive eggs that have been dyed red. We playfully crack our eggs with each other, exclaiming, Christ is risen, truly he is risen. The egg itself symbolizes life, showing Christ has risen from the dead, but also itself is life, being a chicken, of course, and physically gives us human life through nourishment. Food, dance, and song are central to how we celebrate the resurrection of Christ and other feast days. Although we have a long history of His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew engaging in environmental activism and the deep spiritual tradition of our faith, not all of our faithful are aware of the work of the Patriarch, the Feast of Benediction, the Day of the Protection of the Environment on September 1st. There are pockets of incredible work and projects where our parishes engage in environmentally sustainable practices, but we are trying to encourage our parishes, clergy, and faithful to become more green. Last month, our department, I'll spare you the long name, hosted a 4-part webinar series on greening the parish. We are grateful to Marian for speaking on one of the panels, which discussed practical implementation. We received incredibly positive feedback and the desire to engage and take action in our parishes across the United States. In the coming weeks, we will be releasing a Greening the Parish resource page and how-to videos on various topics to support our faithful and parishes as they work to put our theology and the message of our Patriarch into action. As a young adult in this world and in the Orthodox Church, this work is very encouraging and I am very grateful to be part of it. And I look forward to the future projects we are planning and where God continues to unfold different opportunities for connection and action for our common home. Thank you all for listening. I look forward to hearing about Hajat's work and our discussion to come.
Thank you very much indeed, Spiridula. I have to say, I have seen people diving into waters to catch the cross in the Mediterranean, but not in what appears to be something to do with the Arctic. I should imagine you'd have to be quite young and quite brave to do that, but a wonderful tradition. And thank you for giving us a sense of both the seriousness, the theological roots, but also the fun of it and the ritual of it. And one of the most impressive things I remember was that within something like 6 weeks of declaring the day of September the 1st as the day of the protection of creation, new liturgies, new hymns, new prayers have been written. It was something very, very creative indeed. So really, really grateful for that. Sorry about that. I don't know what that carrying off on. So let us now go to Hajat. Hajat is known as Mama Green for the very simple reason that the impact of Hajat on the environment of Uganda has been phenomenal. She is, and I love this title, Hajat, she's an eminent woman of Uganda. And when you've heard her, I'm sure you will agree with me entirely. She is the director of Energizing Solutions Limited and a Goodwill ambassador also for Women Insurance in Africa, an active person right across, not just in Uganda, but much more widely, and certainly one of the most powerful women within Islam around the world. Hajat, it is, as always, a complete delight to have you with us. You're going to give us, in 10 minutes, a presentation on the video, on the slides, and then a video, and then we will have the opportunity to talk a little bit more. And I know that there will be many questions about the kind of things you're going to tell us. So Hajat, thank you for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Allow me to share my screen. That is my screen. I'm talking about Greening Fridays. Today, 23rd, and I've been introduced as Hajat Seriala. The roadmap to this presentation, we are going to look at what are Greening Fridays, why Greening Fridays, when and how Greening Fridays are held. We're going to look at success stories, challenges, way forward, and we shall have a video at the end. Martin, I hope you hear me loud and clear.
I hear you very loud and clear. Carry on, Hajat.
Okay, so the first slide is, what is Greening Friday? As you see the members there that are very happy after prayers, they have plants, they have trees that are going to plant. Greening Friday is an annual day set aside by the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council to celebrate and protect the environment. Why? Why do we have Greening Friday? The key objective is to celebrate and protect the environment, through the use of Islamic teachings, the ayat and hadith. It started in 2010 as a pledge at an interfaith workshop on environment, which was in sub-Saharan Africa in Nigeria. It was a pledge of the lady that you see in the photo there. When are they held? They are held annually during the holy month of Ramadan. And this is every second Friday of Ramadan. They are gazetted in the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council calendar. And what you see there, they have been held for 11 years. The first year was 20th August, 2010, all through the years. You see 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, up to last year, 1st May 2020. And this was during the pandemic lockdown. The next one, as I said, it is gazetted in the UMC calendar. The next one is going to be held next in April, on the 23rd of April, 2021. In 2012, Greening Fridays were included in the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council 7-year plan. And what you see in the photos there, we had a launch in Nairobi by ACK. ACK is Alliance for Religious and Conservations. So we launched the 7-year plans. One of them was for the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, which included Greening Fridays. The other photo on the right is a certificate for the 7-year plan given to me by the chairman of ACK then. And so how is Greening Friday held? The photo speaks volumes that you see there. However, we have a theme of speaking out, improving understanding, and inspiring positive action. So the activities that are held are around that theme. There is speaking out around the teachings of the holy books. What do they say about environment? Which particular area? And in so speaking out, there's improving understanding and positive action is inspired. The activities, there is a Friday sermon, and that sermon is about Islam and the environment. After which, after the prayer, we have talks. And these are usually in a conference hall and these are attended by everybody from the different religions, from friends. Those who did not attend prayers, they come and listen to the talks. And then the action is distribution of seedlings. At the end of the talks, seedlings, the trees are distributed to whoever wishes to take. And the planting of a symbolic fruit tree at the National Mosque. Like you see there, His Eminence, the Mufti, is planting a tree at the National Mosque. Is assisted by very senior clergy and the Hajati Green there. Before the Greening Friday, we have a workshop for clergy to develop this Friday sermon guidelines. So we have a workshop and we agree on the parameters under which the sermon will be covered year in, year out. What you see down, those are photos of the different years, 2010, 2014, and 2019. These are different shapes in the National Mosque giving a sermon. And then the Friday prayers, as you see there, that is a normal prayer, but it is on a Greening Friday, and all the people you see in the mosque have actually listened to that message of environment protection as per teachings of the Muslim teachings. And below you see the distribution of seedlings. People line up to receive seedlings. And then tree planting takes place. You see in 2010 when we launched, His Eminence, the Mufti, planted the first tree. And what you see on the right is the tree as we follow it growing. We don't only stop at planting, we have to follow the tree as it grows. And that was in 2014. It is now a very big tree today. In 2019, the Greening Friday, you see the fruits that are from the Friday, the trees that were planted on the earlier Greening Fridays, they are brought to the mosque for distribution. And then on the same day, that's the Secretary General and the leader of women, they are giving out trees, both indigenous and fruit trees, to the people who, after attending prayers. In 2013 and 14 and 12, they spread to the universities from the main mosque. We went to secondary school and primary schools. What you see in the photos is a secondary school and also a primary school. And also to prisons. Luzira prison is the biggest prison in Uganda, but we took the Greening Friday to prisons to give them a message. And you see His Eminence, the Mufti, is planting a tree with inmates and is assisted by Hajat Green. It spread 12 districts in 2013. You see there is a sensitization seminar for the cars from the 12 districts, after which there is a symbolic tree that is given out, a Hajat cereal and His Eminence, the Mufti. It is planted at the Supreme Council, and each one of those from the 12 districts did plant a symbolic tree, but they also carried trees to their respective districts. We have mainstreamed environmental sensitization in all celebrations and activities. What you see there is a wedding and people lining up to donate living presents. In so doing, they're sensitizing and carrying the message of environmental protection. His Eminence, the Mufti, you see him is harvesting a fruit from a fruit tree planted earlier on one of the Greening Fridays. Other celebrations, you see we had His Excellency, the President, visit the Supreme Council, and we celebrate him by planting a tree. He's there with a hat and he's planting a tree. Then the Director of Sharia is donating a tree at a graduation ceremony so that awareness continues. Achievements. What have we achieved since 2010? This day is gazetted as the second Friday of every holy month of Ramadan. That's a big achievement. It is held every year as gazetted by UMC. So for the last 11 years, it has been held. About 250,000 trees have been planted and distributed, and we have press coverage. The coverage, live coverage. So apart from the message for the people in the mosque, there's a large coverage because we have live coverage every year, year in, year out for all the 11 years. UNEP certificates were given to us as Supreme Council, myself, and others who participate in the program in appreciation of the impact. They spread outside Kampala, and the other achievement, which is so key, international attention. Like today, we are at this webinar, and it is all over the world that people are listening to this message. The National Forest Authority in Uganda, we have a permanent partnership. They donate for us the numbers of trees that we want on every Greening Friday. Recognition as a pioneer. In 2013, I was recognized as the Muslim Achiever for the year, and I received that environment award. In 2014, renowned Makerere University Business School, every year they honor one individual that stands out throughout the world. And 2014, I was the one who received the Meritorious Services Award because of my work in environment. Even during lockdown, Greening Friday was held. This was a tweet from Faith in Water, but as you see, 2020, it's only myself and two other people who assisted me, who were at the mosque then. But compare that with 2019 in the other photo. So many people, but it had to go on despite the lockdown because it is gazetted and it is a noble day, which we could not afford not to hold. Challenges and way forward. We have had a few challenges. The first challenge, number one, logistics to effectively monitor. Because you have over about, say, 100,000 people participating and planting. It's not possible for you to monitor everybody to see how the trees are growing. And then there are some concerns about environmental impacts of eucalyptus trees that are part of the program. There's also another challenge that there's more demand for eucalyptus trees than for fruit trees. The last challenge is that demand exceeds capacity. We have a lot of demand, people asking us for trees, people asking us to go to various places to hold Greening Fridays within their locations, but then we do not have that capacity. We have a lot of demand. We may not, it is both a challenge, but also something that is exciting us, that it is generating a lot of demand. Now, the way forward, we intend to cover the entire country in 7 years. And then we want to ensure that this idea of Greening Fridays or having a particular day for protecting and celebrating the environment spreads well beyond Uganda borders. And this is one of the ways, participating in webinars, international ones like this one. Now, the other way forward is that National Forest Authority here in Uganda is now supplying indigenous trees. So this other one, this photo is, you see that the hilltops have been replanted by eucalyptus because it has a lot of demand. Previously, these hilltops had shrubs, but they have all been cut and they are bare. So they have been replanted in this program by eucalyptus trees, and it has a green cover. As I come to end my presentation, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me, and may God bless you. So what you see there is God's works. Please embrace Greening Friday concept. You may have a day, whatever day you may call it. It may be a Monday after Easter. It may be a Sunday after the Easter Sunday. It may be any day that you choose. But for as long as you have a day that can occur with this activity. Lastly, we are going to have a 3-minute video. And this video is going to showcase a Greening Friday, how it happens, a typical Greening Friday. This was 2014. Please pay attention to the captions on the photos, or the pictures as they run, because there's no sound. Please pay attention. So I'd like to really thank you very much for the listening to me and the opportunity to present Greening Friday and for it to spread beyond borders. Thank you very much, and may God bless you all.
and so obligatory to consult the environment.
Hajat, thank you so much for that presentation, which I think gives us not only the sense of what you've done, but the spirit in which you've done it. But I want to ask you a few questions. So you were at this meeting in Nigeria. Where did this idea of Greening Friday come from? I mean, obviously it came from you, but where did it come from? Something in the Quran? Did it come from a hadith? Did it come from your own experience? Why did you come up with this idea?
Thank you very much, Martin. I would like to say that I would like to ask that I put on my mask now because I have some support around me. That is okay.
Of course it is, and we do fully appreciate how important it is. Hajat is not alone in her office. In fact, her office is a hub of enormous activity. And so with others coming in, Hajat needs to protect them and herself.
Yes, I have my staff here and my support staff. Thank you very much for that question. You said, where did this idea come from? First and foremost, this idea came from me. I've always had an idea of, having a massive activity around protecting the environment, but based on religious teachings. I'd started planting trees long before the Greening Friday. And then in 2010, British Council identified me and made me an ambassador. So as I was an ambassador for British Council on climate change, they took me to Nigeria with 3 others to attend an interfaith workshop, at which it was a 1-week interfaith workshop. At the end of it, we were requested to write pledges, what we'll do when we go back to our countries. And as it was, I was really ready with this idea. One of my pledges, pledge number 1, was start a Greening Friday when I go back to my country to work with Supreme Council and start a Greening Friday. And here we are, Martin, the rest is history.
The rest is history, Hajat. Now, you are a woman in a fairly conservative country within a faith that has also quite a conservative tradition about attitudes. How were you able to persuade the religious leadership that this was an idea that quite clearly they have hugely embraced? I mean, that photograph of you last year in this deserted compound and the year before, where literally there are thousands of people. How did you get this accepted by the religious authorities?
Yes, the beauty is that really environment knows no gender boundaries. It doesn't. Whether you're a woman or a man, you are all affected equally by the effects of, climate change. But for as long as you have a plan, I had a place and I had a plan and a strategy to make it work. So I had to start with the structure of the Supreme Council and introduce the idea to them. So I had to understand the protocol very well. It is important to understand the protocol. So I understood the protocol and we took it from down up to His Eminence, the Mufti. It was embraced and put in the calendar. That's what happened because I had a plan, a strategy, and I understood the protocol of the institution that I had to work with.
And then how was it rolled out? You've clearly had these enormous events at which the Grand Mufti has spoken, has planted trees and so forth. But how is it rolled out across the country? What has been the major way of taking an idea and getting it adopted locally?
Yes, it has, as you saw in the video, in my presentation actually, we had, say, leaders from the 12 districts who attended. And now these other ones, when they are holding their Greening Fridays, they invite others from the respective regions. So it has spread. It hasn't spread 100% throughout the country, but it is our target that it does. as you saw in the presentation. However, across, say like outside Uganda, His Eminence the Mufti has been invited, say to Morocco, to talk about Greening Fridays. He was also invited to Qatar to talk about Greening Fridays. He was also invited to New York at the UN to talk about Greening Fridays. So the idea, because of the massive press coverage, both international and local, that we receive, the idea has now like spread. People know about it. Maybe they haven't implemented, but they know about it. That's what I can say, Martin, about that.
Brilliant. No, thank you. Now, on top of this, I mean, as though creating one new day in the Muslim calendar was not enough, you, along with colleagues like Susie Weldon and Mary Bellacom in Faith in Water, you have also created a Dignity Day. Can you tell us about what Dignity Day is and what your experience has been with that?
Yes, Martin, can you see my staff? There's a staff here.
I can indeed. Hello, welcome.
Yes, when you talk about Dignity Day, because the Dignity Day, as it sounds, it's really exciting. It's dignity for women, dignity for girls. And this is the last Friday of every June. And it has been also gazetted by the Supreme Council to look at menstrual hygiene management. But in so doing, there is an element of environmental protection in there. How do you dispose of the towels that you use? What sort of towels do you use? What nature of cleanness? What level, you know? So all those wash, you know, the hygiene. So that is the day that was created, and we must be grateful to Faith in Water. We worked together for Susie and Mary and my team. We worked together to make sure that, but also the Supreme Council, because they could have said no, but because they saw the success of Greening Friday, they said yes to this other one, which is Dignity Day, and we are grateful.
That's wonderful. And just to encapsulate, I mean, the real significance of focusing particularly on menstrual care for girls in schools is that if there isn't that care, they don't go to school.
Yeah, they don't go to school. And actually statistics shows that before these interventions were put in place, the percentages of those who are dropping out of school because of, you know, fear, they didn't have materials to use, intimidation, and all these other things. But as you say, with this intervention, that improves the rates of girls that drop out of school because of menstrual hygiene issues.
Yeah, it's hugely impressive, Hajat. And I know I'm the chair of Faith in Water, and I've seen videos of Catholic bishops showing how to make a sanitary towel. And the Boys Brigade, Boy Scouts of Uganda are making these for the girls. It is a phenomenal achievement that you have pulled off.
Yes, it is a phenomenal achievement, Martin. But then the thing is, previously, before this Dignity Day, it was a no-go. You will not go to the mosque and start talking about menstruation. There's no way, there's no way at all. But here we have packets full of these towels, and you ask the Grand Mufti to hand over to a girl, you know? It is all amazing.
It is amazing.
Like, yes, it's very, very amazing how the attitudes of the people is changing. Really needs to, and the attitude has changed, and we are happy that that is happening.
No, well, that's wonderful. Thank you. I wanted to go particularly into that because I think it's so important that, in a sense, once you begin to create a new sense of meaning within the calendar around a topic, it can expand to others. And this is particularly in many parts of the world, this issue of girls in schools and menstruation is hugely important. But can I invite Spiridula to join us again and to take questions? Spiridula, thank you so much for joining us. Let us go. I think, Pippa, you're in charge of questions, aren't you? So let's fire away.
I do. We have some in the chat and some in the Q&A. The first one from the chat asks, what are the biggest problems in trying to create such days? And how do you encourage people and parishes, etc., to make this their own? I wonder if Spiridula, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So I will say that a lot of the work that was done by people that we like to say they planted the seeds, and now my generation is trying to continue to water and grow it, right? In the same way that Hajat is doing the trees, which I think is awesome. So I think a lot of just speaking from an American context, specifically in the Greek Orthodox context, a lot of people faintly know about the first day of September as the day of the protection of the environment. And depending if the priest decides to read the encyclical or not, that comes from the patriarch. But the challenge really is then putting into action what the patriarch has been saying for so many years and actually engaging our parishes and our clergy and our faithful to take this to heart. So Hajat, I learned a lot from you about the trees and plantings. I think that's fantastic. So it made me think about what we can do next. So I think the challenge is, one, making sure everyone is aware and knows what the work of the Green Patriarch is, and then also not being over kind of burdened with how big this task is, right? So giving simple opportunities and tasks to put September 1st into action. And this is kind of the next steps we're going into, because as I mentioned, the webinars had a really good response, and these smaller how-to videos that we're going to be releasing soon are going to be putting Orthodox Christians around the country explaining how you can do these very small, simple things in your own local community, at your local parish, to work towards this greening idea as we continue to build to the long term. So I would say awareness and then building that to education and action is a challenge.
Can I just ask a corollary question to that, to you, Spiridula? Do you find that the interest and the support for this primarily comes from the clergy, or is it coming more from the laity? And in the laity, would it be more young people who are concerned about this?
It's a mix, I would say. There's definitely the challenge, at least I'm sure this is maybe in other areas too, but again, speaking from American context, it's very politicized, right? So of course our people are also fall within different lines of that, and just because of what is around us. So part of it is some clergy and faithful definitely think this is important, and but the word climate change can sometimes be dividing, right? So our challenge is also to depoliticize it and look into the theology of our church, as I mentioned, that this is something we do every Sunday in the liturgy. So it kind of falls between both, but I will say more recently, definitely the young voices have been trying to do even more, but again, built on the voices of those that have done a lot of work in the past that might have not been recognized. So definitely it's of all those things, right? The continuous cultivation of the work that has been done. So God willing, good things to come in the future as well.
Thank you. And Mugaluma asked a similar question. So I will throw this one to Hajat. Mugaluma asked, what do you take as a major single challenge in your journey towards environmental conservation?
The major challenge that I look at is the rates at which the forest cover is being destroyed cannot match the rate at which we plant the trees. That's the biggest challenge. We need to do much, much more, because throughout the world, the rate at which the forest cover is being removed or destroyed, the current trees that are being destroyed, you cannot match the rate at which we are, planting or replanting. So we need to do more. And the trees that are being destroyed are much bigger trees, 100 years. Now, by the time you plant trees to grow, it takes a very long time. That is why people are now jumping to trees like eucalyptus, which take, say, 3 years. But indigenous trees take like 30 years to grow. So I think that's what I look at as the biggest challenge.
Thank you. Spiridula, Metropolitan Seraphim asks, well, first he thanks you very much for your wonderful presentation, and he asked specifically, what activities do you organise on ecology in your parishes, and how often do you organise such activities?
So I think it's, thank you, Your Eminence, for your question as well first. it's definitely dependent on the parish. I know there is one in California, for example, that grows their own grapes as a parish, and then they make their own wine for Holy Communion. I know my local parish is not there yet. In our local area, just trying to get away from styrofoam plates and cups is a thing. So it really depends on the parish and the willingness of the people and the clergy to do something. So part of the work that we are trying to do is to really raise up those best practices, like I mentioned, the wine, or there's beekeepers or chicken keepers across the country to say, hey, you can do this too, but also finding the best local solution for what the needs of your local community and local environment are. So I don't have an exact answer because it really varies parish to parish. And I know for us, we talked about with building a garden, as my mom was saying, in our local parish, it's to use the green space that is there. So it's a work in progress that we're trying to work on.
Thank you. We have a comment from Abdullah in Kenya, agreeing with you, Hajat, in response to your question on challenges and deforestation. And Abdullah says, we need to lobby for stringent laws to be put into place in order to protect the environment. Here in Kenya, felling of trees for charcoal burning is rampant. Logging is also another disaster, and pollution of the air is at its worst. So just again, highlighting the issues. And we have a question here from Arthur Dahl, who says, the scientific news about the environment and climate change is so depressing. How can our faith traditions bring more hope and the joy of working on solutions? I wonder if Hajat, you want to answer, and then we'll come to Spiridula for your comments on that too. So how can our faith traditions bring more hope and the joy of working on solutions?
That's a very good question. I think we need to continue sensitizing our people, because the scripts cover it all. In the Quran, there's so many verses that talk about environment and what would happen if you don't protect the environment. So if we go deep into the scripts and follow the scripts and protect the environment as per the scripts, I'm sure we should be able to overcome whatever challenge there is.
Could I just ask a corollary to Hajat? If you were to point to 2 or 3 texts within the Holy Quran that have particularly inspired you and that you share with others to inspire them, what are they?
Martin, I really have very many verses, and it is the verses, but also there is the hadith. The verses are in the Quran, but the hadiths are these teachings of the Holy Prophet. For instance, one of the hadiths says, if you plant a fruit tree, or a tree for that matter, and a bird or an animal or a person eats from it, from those fruits, or gets in the shade, you get lasting rewards, you as a person, whether you are living or even after the hereafter. So that means that when you plant a tree, then you have this drive to care for this tree, to make sure that lasting reward is there for you. There are other hadiths, there are very many actually, there are very, very many. There's one that says that on the day, even if doomsday is like rooming, and you have a palm in your hand, please plant it. You know, it is so, you know, there's so many, Martin. It's difficult for me, because it means that when I cite one, I must say it in Arabic first, and then translate it for you in English. But there's so many.
Good, that's lovely. Thank you very much. And Spiridula, before we come to your question, are there texts from the Bible or from the teachings from the Church Fathers that have inspired you? Is there a text? I'm coming back to Arthur's question in a sense. What gives us hope? What from your great texts gives you hope? What would you quote to somebody to inspire them?
I think it's a mix of both. So I would think the first thing that pops into my mind are the Psalms, which is shared through some of the Abrahamic religions, and also I would say through the hymns of the church, like I mentioned, the one from the Feast of Theophany. So there are so many hymns that intertwine creation in whatever way it may be, and really showing that together we praise God in that way. And so I can't think of one specifically, but definitely the Psalms are one way. And also the point about having the hope, I think just watching the past couple of months, seeing what has happened, because starting this Greeting the Parish initiative through our department, there's joy in people coming together and connecting as humans first and foremost, and then connecting again to our creation, right? And seeing that shared thread of humanity and being created by the Creator. So there's hope in that we are together trying to do something that we deeply believe in, love, and see the beauty around us. And it's hard. Obviously, we're still, a lot of us in lockdown, but I think what has been beautiful is to see that through that, people are still coming together, and there's joy and hope in that.
Thank you. We have a very good question here. Do these days of celebration, do they change or affect behaviour by the faithful throughout the rest of the year? Or does the day just become an excuse to kind of put it all into this one day and it's ignored for the rest of the year? Hajat, would you like to answer that?
Yes, of course. It's a very good question. We have a Greening Friday, but on that Greening Friday, we report what we have done throughout the year. So when we go to the schools, this is a different day from this Greening Friday. You call it Greening Friday Extra. So when we go to the women, it is a different day. There is this Greening Friday. So all the activities throughout the year, we come and now report on the Greening Friday. After the prayer, I told you there is a session of discussions and presentations. This is when we present whatever we have done throughout the year. So it is not one day that you just do that day and then wait until the next year. You would not plant 250,000 trees just using one day. So these are the activities that we do outside this one day. The ones that now complement the Greening Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Hajat. And a question here: how do you promote the celebration days? How do you promote them both nationally and internationally? I know some of these have spread globally. And how much support do you need to give from your end on supporting this idea as it becomes bigger and bigger?
It is important that, like now we have the social media, but you see, as I said, we have massive press coverage for the Greening Fridays. But for all the days that's where we do these activities, there is publicity. So it is this publicity that now is, at least the publicity, you see we have this day here, but then it will culminate into Greening Friday, which is happening on the second Friday of the holy month of Ramadan. So I think that answers that question, Pippa. I don't know.
Can I just ask another corollary to that? You chose yes. Ramadan. I mean, obviously Ramadan is this period of fasting, of yes. reflection. It's yes. already a time when the mosques are asking people to be much more simple and reflective. How has that shaped Green Friday?
Holding it during the holy month of Ramadan, that is the best thing that has ever happened. This is when everybody's reflecting. This is when everybody's into their religion. So when you add now the aspect of environment, and you are planting this treasured tree during Ramadan, it is such a treasured moment. So it is an advantage, a big one. So so to say, Martin, yes, that it is happening during Ramadan. Couldn't have been a better timing other than during Ramadan. And getting a slot in Ramadan was not easy. because there are many, many programs that compete for that space in Ramadan. As you saw the numbers in the mosque, they are over flooding. Everybody's attentive, everybody's believing, everybody's, everybody's, observing to the latest. So there couldn't have been a better timing.
No, it's an amazing achievement, Hajat, a major achievement, I have to say. Pippa, sorry, over to you.
No, I have a question here specifically to you, Spiridula. You're working with all the Orthodox churches and other faiths. What challenges does this present to you, and what examples do you have from other churches on what they're doing too?
Yeah, definitely. So our department is at the intersection. We are based in the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, so we do all the external affairs for the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, so a lot of interfaith dialogue in that way, and ecumenical as well. And then we are also connected to the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops of the United States, which connects us to the all the Orthodox churches in the US. So within our department on the interfaith ecumenical side, we have a lot of models to look at of what churches have done here in the US. For example, I have some friends in the Evangelical Lutheran Church, and they are a lot more ahead of having they have the goal of going with the Sustainable Development Goals of trying to have some of their parishes be carbon neutral by 2025, which I'm sure has adjusted because of COVID now. But looking at these models that other churches have put into place, because we're a little bit behind here in the US in the Orthodox Church. So there's a lot of room for collaboration and to learn from one another. I not necessarily have experienced challenges within those spaces, but the challenge again is within our own communities right now of actually getting people on board. And we're grateful because, as we did in our parish webinars recently, we have a lot of colleagues and friends to look to for advice and to help us go through things that they've already done and know where the mistakes are so we don't make the same and can kind of grow from those.
Thank you. Hajat, we have a comment and a question here from Metropolitan Seraphim who says, nice to see you again, dear Hajat. I remember you when you received a special award by ARC in Nairobi for your 7-year plan on the environment. And Metropolitan Seraphim asks, what is the outcome of your 7-year plan and how many people participate today? And thanks you for your presentation.
That's a very good question. The outcome of our 7-year plan, were able to cover 85% when we evaluated how we performed. Greening Friday was one of the items that we put in our plan, and you see how successful it is. And the other thing that we had was women. It wasn't part of the original 7 areas, but we added a section on women. And we intensified our efforts with women and environment. And we have the Gomba Women Environment and Development group, which has done very well. It has over 100 members. And each one of them has a project which is environmentally friendly. So in all the areas which we put in our plan, we performed 85%. So the other 15% that we did not perform, we are rolling it over in the 7-year plan that we are now writing in this. But I'm happy to listen to him. I remember him very well in Nairobi. And I can't wait to physically meet him. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Spiridula, we have a question here for you. Again, thanking you for your presentation. Is it fair to say that some people are put off by events or celebration days that can simply be pigeonholed as environmental? And by contrast, could you say something more about the Orthodox monastic witness as an example of how to use the world that indisputably comes out of faith and spiritual life?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank Dr. Elizabeth who put that question. She can definitely speak a lot more to this than I can. So I definitely would recommend having her as a future speaker. But thank you, Dr. Elizabeth, for that question. I definitely think so too. I think that is kind of the challenge we have at the moment within America, at least, is to not have the day, September 1st, to only be this one day, as mentioned before, as Hajat was saying, which I think your work is incredible that you then report what has been done in that year. And I think the challenge for us is, since we have the entire United States under our jurisdiction, is finding the best way to, I guess, have kind of environmental ambassadors that will continue this work throughout the year, and really saying and showing that it is something of our life as human beings, but an Orthodox ethos as well. And I don't know, I would say enough about the monastic tradition, but from what I've experienced, and even I know Dr. Elizabeth, who offered the question, showed my family this beautiful monastery in outside of Thessaloniki in Greece that has all organic farming. So really this practice that like what is of the earth is sacred, and we continue to give and take from the earth in this equitable way, which I know a lot of other faith traditions do too. But just thinking about how the monastics will wake up in the middle of the morning or evening, and at dawn or at dusk, and within the cycle of the day and the earth too, right? Seeing and using the beeswax candles in the church, and it's dark because it's dark outside, and really then being one, so to speak, more with the earth and the cycle of the earth, and also not partaking extra when it's not necessary. So the monastery, for example, they have organic seeds and they sell them later on, and I'm actually not sure, I think they just exchange them, but promoting this more healthy, sustainable way. So I think that's one example that we saw, but just the monastic tradition, also speaking generally, but more can speak better than me on this, is that it has this taking less than we need, right? We don't need that much food. Fasting is obviously a big part of the ascesis, the exercise of spiritual life. And also then again, really working the earth and then understanding and respecting what God has given us even more. So I know people go to monasteries as pilgrimage to really escape from this world and hopefully take more from that way. But I would invite more to speak on that, somebody else too.
Thank you. That's fascinating. That is all, unfortunately, we have time for on the Q&A, but I know we will be making both of your presentations public, and they both have your contact details on them. So if people want to do any follow-up or ask any more questions, then we will make your email addresses public for that. So I'll hand back to Martin.
Thank you, Pippa, and thank you, Hajat and Spiridula. I'll thank you properly in a moment. But Spiridula, just going through to this issue about the monasteries, we did a lot of work with the Orthodox Church, particularly with Metropolitan John of Pergamon, and all our major meetings we held at Ormelia, the wonderful nunnery just in Halkidiki in northern Greece. And what was one of the most impressive things there, as also with the Orthodox nuns in Solan in France, these are organic farms, and they produce all their food is organic, and they train local farmers. They actually have major programs training people on how to move into organic farming. And I think one of the most extraordinary stories I know is that Solan, which is Greek Orthodox nuns in the south of France, with this very major organic farm, the chair of their entire Friends of is a renowned French atheist. But this is the place where he finds something of meaning he finds nowhere else. And I think that extraordinary witness of the monastic is quite a phenomenal thing. So I want to thank you both, Hajat and Spiridula, for your tremendous input. And I think you've given us a sense, both of the hard work that it takes to celebrate, and also why it's worth celebrating. These things don't happen by accident. They happen because people like you decide it's going to change, and it's going to change in a way that will engage people. And I just want to thank you hugely on behalf of all of us who've listened today for your contributions. And we look forward to the new long-term plans that we know you are all working on, and Spiridula, that the Greek Orthodox Church of North America is going to coordinate for the other Orthodox churches. So enormous thanks. Just to remind people that we have 3 more of the mainstream, that is to do with the key topics in the 7-year plans. We have a financial assets webinar on the 9th of March, which will actually look at how do you manage, not just where your money is, but also what it can do. We have the theme of wisdom, on the 15th of April with a fascinating program of people from around the world, including from China, a major presentation joining us from China. And then Media and Advocacy, which will be chaired by Susie Weldon, the Head of Communications and Media for Faith Invest, and that's the 27th of April. But I want to add to that something that Hajat touched on just at the very end, and that is gender. We are looking now at the period after April and leading up to when the plans we hope will start to appear in the summer and into August and September, at other topics that are not specifically spelt out in the in the long-term plans at the moment, but are going to increasingly be spelt out. And gender will be one of those. And I hope that we will be able to have both of you join us again to explore some of those issues, because it is a topic on which the faiths don't always have the best of track records, to put it mildly. So I wanted to pick up particularly on Hajat's comment on that and say this is something we're going to address. So really with that, thank you all very much for joining us today. I hope you've had a celebratory time listening to this, and that you will take this message that the environment is so important. It is so vital. It is so critical. If we can't celebrate it, I don't know where we're going to get the energy from to keep going. And on the wisdom webinar, we will actually be hearing about a whole program emerging out of one of the faiths, out of Buddhism, which is actually helping those who have been burnt out by being so caught up in the environmental movement that they've given up hope, a Buddhist technique, a wisdom on how to keep a balance between our desire to save the planet, our desire also perhaps to look after ourselves. So with that, with huge thank yous to Hajat and to Spiridula, please join us again on the 9th of March, and God bless. Goodbye, bye-bye.
Bye.